Welcome to the Phoenix Downbeat. I'm Drew Kreisman alongside my brother Ira Kreisman. You know us as the Everything is Final Fantasy podcast, and we are joined once again and always by our friend Ryan Laney of Airship Overdrive. And this is going to be super fun because we're doing a questionnaire, a Q&A, a grab bag, also a smorgasbord. Do I get to say it again? Kind of.
You can say smorgasbord.
Anytime I want. Yeah, this is going to be great. We got a lot of questions. We also got several comments. Actually, before we solicited questions, there were several things that people were saying either on the Patreon, which of course, remember, is just $1 a month, out there on YouTube, which is being mean to us right now, but still, if that's your way of getting things, check it out. All the podcast apps, which is the best way to help this show right now. So remember to go on there. And I know those folks are behind. They've only gotten 5 episodes of this show so far. I'm gonna catch them out there, catch them up, I should say, in the podcast world. But before we get into the Q&A, because this is kind of a step back and think about the show so far, guys, you know, our first episode was August 15th. So we've gone a little over 5 months now. Did you realize that? Is that about how it felt?
Wow, I thought it was more like a September, October start. I didn't realize it was that far back.
Yeah, August 15th was when we published. So we would have recorded a week before that, but that's the official beginning of the show. This is our 19th episode. We have on my organizational charts, and I'll admit there are several things that got left off of this. At some point I had to decide, like, not to count playing Distant Worlds or like the 3DS versions of some of these. So I haven't counted everything, but we've discussed at least 137 pieces of music on this show. Can you believe that?
Good. I would not have guessed it even half that high. I would have guessed somewhere in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, it's, you know, some of them, I did start to count things that we were sneaking into the background and would just sort of mention and not necessarily dissect. Sometime I might go back and break it down into the pieces we really talked about. But I did want to kind of keep tabs on what we were talking about in general. Final Fantasy VIII amongst the mainline series. We've discussed 57 pieces of mainline series Final Fantasy music, and Final Fantasy VIII leads the way, but with 8, it's not way out in front. It's just there. So the other thing that I wanted to note, 21 pieces of just non-Final Fantasy or like Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross music. We've talked about 21 pieces of other video game music. Only one a piece. We've never double dipped outside of. Yeah, so we've touched on a lot of different franchises and kind of kept it a variety there. And we've kept it pretty low in terms of the number of classical and film and TV pieces. Classical music that Ryan has brought us is 13 pieces, 6 from film and TV, and that's mostly because those tend to get demonetized more often. And so we're a little more judicious with what we choose to play there. But some fun little stats for you there on the show thus far. And one other thing that I wanted to mention was that I think we should aim to do about one Q&A per 20 episodes or so. I think that would be a fun thing. But it's amazing to me how quickly this came together, became a thing, that we're already on the verge of 20 episodes and that we've already discussed so much. And there's still so much yet to discuss.
I love those stats, and I love that we're doing a Q&A episode today. We're going to go through a bunch of questions kind of for me, the quote-unquote music expert in the room. Drew and Ira are going to have some follow-ups potentially, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. But yeah, I'm way stoked to do something for our listeners to kind of give back to them, give back to the Patreon folks, all that good stuff, and just help teach the world a bit about how music works.
It's going to be fun. Hey, before we get to those people, though, let's start with a bit more me. There were a couple. I want to get through these kind of quickly, but there were a few things I've gone back through and reposted and edited some of these episodes that I just had to do for like housekeeping. These first 2 were basically alley-oops that Ryan threw to me that I came very close to dunking and then just let the ball fly over my head into the crowd and never, like, what you mentioned in our Man with the Machine Gun episode when we played the Black Mages version, that they would go into a riff for another piece. And they do, and I wanted to talk about it, and we never came back and said Legendary Beast was the piece that they go into.
I'm so glad you said that, because that was a YouTube comment, I think, wasn't it? And I remember also seeing it, and I was like, oh, they're right. We never actually said, yes, the Black Mages version, they go into the Legendary Beasts also from Final Fantasy VIII in a really smooth way. It works incredibly well.
There's going to be more Legendary Beasts talk later. Sometime we're going to break that piece of music down too. It's going to be a lot of fun. Another thing that I noticed that I came right up to the verge of making a fantastic point, but never codified it. In our Battle with the Four Fiends episode, you put me onto the fact that each movement was representative of one of the four fiends. And as we were going throughout, I was kind of deciding which one. And I never came back at the end and said, I've got it. It goes wind, water, earth, fire, almost certainly. Now, people are entitled to their interpretations. And this is a conversation we're going to come back to today. Music can be highly interpretive. But based on what we went through with the way the stabby bits are first, the flowy bits come second, the very earthy, drudgy bits, and then the chaos, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the order. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I would buy that.
Air, water, earth, fire is also the Avatar cycle, for what it's worth.
Oh, now this I like. Now everything is Final Fantasy. Here we're going.
What was it? They call them the books. Each season was a book in Avatar. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I want to mention came from our episode on Ascension just a couple ago, and I want to replay something Ryan played for us on the piano at the time. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I said that it felt like Final Fantasy IV and IX music to me. Then when I was editing the episode, I went, no, you heard Final Fantasy I and IX music. In particular, when Ryan is playing this bit of Ascension from Final Fantasy XVI, I heard Matoya's Cave from Final Fantasy I and Alexandria from Final Fantasy IX. And I would like for you to listen for that.
I hear it. I hear it there.
Yeah, because Matoya's Cave begins... Do 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 do.
No, but I hear it, and it's the same thing with all those like kind of minor setting. You're doing arpeggios a lot throughout those sorts of things. It's the kind of thing that even if it wasn't a through line of Final Fantasy, you can start hearing those things more. And I'm guessing that both of you in these episodes we've recorded have probably started doing that, where you hear something and you go, oh, I now hear this thing that Ryan mentioned on an episode. Oh, here it is again in a completely unrelated thing,
Yep, absolutely.
I don't always remember what word or phrase to use, but I do make some of those connections somewhere up here.
Good.
The other bit about those similar melodies that I noticed when we were all singing it, and Ryan made the joke about how we got to do our a cappella version of it. When we were singing it, you know what it sounded like to me? Bum 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 bum.
Oh, Hall of the Mountain King, Grieg. I thought you were going to be doing the Kefka theme for a second there.
Hey, look, we got similarities all over the place, but you knew where I took it, right? So there's something to that up and down melodic structure that, is a lot of fun and interesting. But yeah,
and actually, that piece in the Hall of the Mountain King, there's some surprisingly good like lessons on a music theory level that any young composer should check out just to see how it's constructed. Short piece of music. It's only like 2 minutes long. I think it's very, very tight and condensed, but it's good. Ooh, is it a good piece?
All right, let's get to our first question from Patreon. Thomas had several comments. Thomas is a super fan who's really upped his engagement with us since we've began the show, so I wanted to give a shout out to him. And he mentioned on our episode about the village of Dali, he says, maybe I'm overthinking it, but if you listen specifically to 145 to 205 of Village of Dali, there's something in the background, and he says in parentheses, strings, that sound very familiar to the intro of the next song, Beyond the Twilight, which is 100% ominous sounding, where we talked about Village of Dali kind of having its ominous stuff under the surface, right? So let's listen to 145 to 205 of Village of Dali, and then the beginning of the next piece called Beyond the Twilight.
Okay. What do you guys think?
I heard a very similar sounding, like it's faint in the village of Dolly. They're way back there, and I had to go back and listen a couple of times. But yeah, I heard what sounds to be that similar synth sounding string, just holding one note, just kind of, but almost unsteady.
Yeah, a little bit of tremolo added to it.
Yeah, I didn't really hear it there, but that's if I don't know to look for it, sometimes I'm going to miss things.
Yeah, I would say there is a similarity there, even on that very last chord that you just played for us, where that top note is a shared note in the Dolly one, if my inner ear is remembering it correctly. Might be a stretch to say it's like the same thing from the same song, because the chord structure is very, very different. Like the Twilight one is very like what you'd call like atonal or pantonal, where it just kind of jumps around keys for a little bit, whereas Dolly is a lot more kind of like, here's your key for at least 4 measures or so. But it is the same string patch, whatever that little like string synthy kind of sound is. It's definitely the same one. And because that music plays literally when you're underground at Dolly, maybe it was intentional and it only plays for a couple bars in the Dolly theme. That's a new one to me, actually. So I'm gonna just say yes. Like maybe.
I like it. It's kind of like what Ira was saying. Sometimes when I'm led to it, I'll hear it maybe even more than it's there. But as I was listening to these, because of this question, I felt like, oh yeah, there's a little hint of what's underneath the tension. You even mentioned in that episode that all of the melodic notes are diatonic except one, but there's maybe some weirder stuff happening under the surface. Mm-hmm. And so even if it's not the exact same, I think those string notes under the surface are preparing you for, and I wanted to ask about this, the sort of continuity of scoring. Mm-hmm. When you think about scoring for a video game or for a film, for a TV series, how important is it to you to do those kinds of things, to hint at the next piece? Because on this show, we've mostly taken pieces out of context or discussed them one at a time. I thought this was a good opportunity to think about back-to-back pieces and how they relate to each other.
Yeah, this is actually a really good, like, do you want to look at that now? And I'll say one of the questions that I have already lined up, because it's almost the exact same kind of question. Do you want to answer it now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so I had a question. This is actually one from my wife. She wanted to ask one on the pod. And her question was, when a game studio starts creating a game, how do they go about deciding what kind of music to make, the genres, live music versus digital, which songs will go where, etc.? And your question is very, very similar, where it's just like, how do they, kind of tell the story? We've discussed how Uematsu tells the story in the music frequently. How do they do that? And I mean, there's no like definite way to do it. It's very much kind of like making a 5-course meal, where it's like, hey, you want each of the parts of the meal to kind of go in a sequential order, so that's a satisfying beginning, middle, and end, right? And you can have music in a game, in a movie, in whatever media you're talking about, that doesn't really like have any blatant connections, doesn't really use any leitmotif, doesn't use any character themes or anything, and you can still have a wonderfully well done piece of music and a well done piece of media. You don't need those things. So it really depends. One of the most straightforward ones that I like to use is when we use the Imperial March, which we've discussed like 3 times recently on the show, from Star Wars, which, by the way, if you didn't know, the Imperial March was not in episode 4, the first Star Wars movie. It only came about in episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, which is the big bum, 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 ba-da, bum, ba-da. Everyone recognizes it. And even though it wasn't in episode 4, John Williams, the composer for Star Wars, he was told by George Lucas well ahead of time, before he put even a single note to paper when he was doing the first movie, that basically he said, hey, Darth Vader is Luke's father. Here's a little bit of the background you should be aware of and kind of what's going on. And so what he did was he made Vader's theme. It's called the Imperial March, but it's also Vader's theme. He made Vader's theme in a way where it sounds like this big foreboding thing, but in reality, he's Anakin Skywalker, and he started as a good, kind-hearted person. Did you guys know that the Imperial March is a major triad?
I didn't. No, I wouldn't.
If you play at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's I think it's the normal key is in A flat major or C minor, but yeah, or E flat major rather. But yeah, it's a major triad. And what John Williams did was he knew that from the get-go, and so he made it so that it was like, oh no, Anakin's a good person at heart, like he really is like a pure being, but he's in a very bad context because he's been turned over to the dark side basically. And so if you were to play his theme based in C minor, which it normally is, that sounds very imposing and very evil. But if you suddenly put it in A flat or E flat major, your ear still hears it as like, oh, it still sounds foreboding, but it's actually a major triad. All this to say, back to, was it Tom's question, yeah. Thomas? Back to the question of like, there's no real like textbook for this. It just kind of depends. It can be done. I think in my eyes it should be done. I did a whole album that was based on the Traveler's theme from Outer Wilds, but it doesn't have to. And we could talk for an hour on this one topic, right. But if you have any follow-ups, Tom, please reach out to me directly. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions via email or something else.
For sure. We do have one more, speaking of doubling up, from Thomas, that it was similar to something that Eli asked. And Ira, you remember Eli from our Wars of the Roses episode. He and his wife are Shakespearean scholars. Yeah, I said it, Eli, live with it. You're scholars out there. And it was great to learn a lot from them in regards to the Final Fantasy Tactics conversation. He mentioned with I believe it was the Man with the Machine Gun episode where you went through all of the different synth sounds. And he said he's very sensitive to those notes and those sounds, and that it could actually be almost borderline painful at times. And then Thomas asked a question about chords or notes potentially outstaying their welcome so long that it starts to feel bad or uneasy to you as a person. And now I'm sure we're going to, again, this is one of those things we could either talk about for 5 minutes or an hour. But I want to combine their questions and ask you kind of about those sensitivities. People that have, a particular sensitivity to the synth sound, or maybe to something that stays too long and is uneasy, and to what extent can you take those types of things into consideration?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in that question. And so I'm going to go with primarily the tone quality or the timbre of a note, because we could talk about like a note or a passage like sustaining or overstaying its welcome for far too long, which, by the way, I'm going to right now before that was my alarm for this podcast. We're recording early today for those of us at home. I'm going to send a link here in the chat to Drew. And this is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time that we haven't really discussed, I don't think, ever on the show. This is a piece that I'll ask Drew to play a little bit of it here. That's called Music for 18 Musicians by Steve Reich. And Steve Reich is a minimalist composer, which, for those of us who might know minimalism from the like art world, like the visual media, Drew or Ira, can either of you explain briefly what minimalism is in any kind of like artistic sense?
Well, I can try. Using the least amount of colors. Your palette might be 3 colors, maybe not monochromatic, not just black and white, but I've certainly seen YouTube artists say, I'm just going to use these 3 colors for this. Or if you're writing, you might be very spare with the description. You might not go into Tolkien-esque length to describe the food or the landscape. So that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, it's basically like, I heard someone once call it the absence of indulgence in art, which I think is a really cool description, because it's like, we're not doing anything flourishy. We're not doing anything that's super, I don't want to say like technical, because there is technicality you can still have to making good minimalist art, but it's basically bare bones, stripped down, like Ira said, 3 colors, or even like you said, monochromatic. You can have just like black and white only and have that be a minimalist structure. This is minimalist music. And I'm going to ask Drew, just pick a spot somewhere in the middle of this piece. The full thing is like 40 or 50 minutes long, and just let's listen to just like even 10-15 seconds of it. and then jump about 10 minutes later and play 10 seconds or so of that. So each of those two separate parts, what do you guys hear?
Not a whole lot of different instruments. It all sounds like xylophones to me.
Yeah. And structurally, there's not much changing, is there? It's the same measure over and over again. And we're not going to do it here for obvious reasons, but in the full piece, these changes happen incredibly slowly, where it might be 12 or 16 repetitions of a part, and then you hear like one clarinet come in, and it very slightly changes the texture of what you're listening to. I love this stuff. Some people hate this stuff, and they cannot listen to minimalist music without going insane. So for the listeners at home, I encourage you, give Music for 18 Musicians by Steve Reich a try. But we're going to discuss first the whole thing with like the synthesizer note. There are definitely frequencies for some people, or certain timbres or tone qualities of a note, where if it plays for even just 1 second beyond their comfort range, it gets very grating. And back to the Man at the Machine Gun episode, we talked a lot about different synthesis methods and how you can have like your square wave, your sine wave, your triangle wave, etc. And some of those are kind of rough to listen to. Like they are like either really squeaky in the high register, or they just don't sit well with you. You're not crazy for thinking this. Don't worry. This is a normal thing. And on that particular song, there might be a certain frequency that you hear and you just kind of go, ugh, I don't like that. And to ask you guys like about that whole, range, when you hear about like those really high frequencies, does it remind you of anything in real life by chance that might be a not so pleasant experience when you hear really high, like,
my ear was ringing.
Yeah. Any kind of screeching noise, right? I live in the city, so tires screeching or sirens sometimes, or I'm also the father of a 1.5-year-old, and there are certain high-pitched noises that come with that.
Some of that can be a sign of danger too, especially in a city or traffic.
Yeah,
it can. And if any of you have ever had extensive dental work, it might remind you of the drill at the dentist. And so, yeah, exactly. I wish you guys could have seen Drew's face just now. And so that sound might be making you remember an unpleasant experience, because those are not exactly soothing sounds in any regard. So you're not crazy for feeling like it's maybe overstating its welcome. Those kind of notes, they are just intrinsically very grating, and they are very unnatural, which is why your brain goes, don't like it.
Right. Interesting.
I've got a question for you now that just take us slightly off track. We were talking about minimalist music and the slow change over time, and the one that made me think of right away was that very slow dynamic change from pianissimo to fortissimo. Is it bolero that just slowly gets louder and louder throughout, and just barely changes anything? I think it adds some instruments and it just gets louder.
Yes, Bolero by Maurice Ravel is a fantastic piece of music that was considered kind of like an experiment at the time in the early 1900s. And yes, it starts off with literally like a 4 Ps snare drum part. And it just builds up the entire piece until the end is like there's like gongs going off and giant trombone type stuff. But there's only like 2 melodies in the whole thing, really. And it's like a 14-minute long piece of music. And you can definitely argue that that's minimalism, because you're only hearing 1 or 2 different melodies, and there's a snare drum part that's playing the exact same thing in the background. There's a little bass part playing the exact same thing. And yet for some reason, something about it is engaging, right? Spot on. Give Bolero a listen. Fantastic piece of music.
All right. A couple of big classics to go and listen to now. Love that. We're going to keep the questions going now into Discord, where I should never have expected better of any of you. You know who you are.
I don't get into the Discord that much. I'm sure I would find it amusing, but I'm not good at that sort of thing.
Amusing it is. We love these folks. We have a lot of fun. But they basically just came in with requests for future episodes, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. Vader, who does a podcast of his own, and I'll edit in the name of it because I forgot that I wanted to mention this and grab this note, but he does a podcast talking about music with his son. The name of the podcast is Leitmotif and Movement, a father and son journey through rock, metal, and music history. Check them out. Talking about a lot of the old classic rock and roll like Black Sabbath and stuff like that, and kind of introducing his son to his music. And it's a really fun show. And so they're huge music fans. They've been a day one adopter of listening to this show and engaging with it, and wrote us a really nice review early on. So big shout out to Vader.
Thanks, Vader.
With two requests. One for Rydia's theme, Final Fantasy IV. And the other one for probably the piece of music that we have discussed the most, both on and off air, about doing and just haven't done, from Final Fantasy V, Battle on the Big Bridge. There's no way we won't do an episode. There's no chance that won't happen.
I would love to do, like, we actually, when we did our what we call it, songs of love and hate, or themes of love and hate from 4, we actually talked about potentially doing Rydia's theme instead of the love theme for that one, and it just kind of worked out thematically to have, like, it's literally just called the love theme, I think, in that game. Battle of the Big Bridge, absolutely, it's on our docket of like to discuss focused episodes, and Rydia's theme is one that I guarantee we'll probably do, like, if not one about just it, I'd love to do like a characters of Final Fantasy IV themes episode of some sort. We'll fit it in there some way, so don't worry, Vader. I can guarantee we'll get to those before episode 50.
Oh, I like that. There you go. There's a good we can live up to that, I feel.
Yeah.
I know you're a big fan of the Rydia theme as well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece, and I do want to talk about it.
So the next request gives me an opportunity to voice perhaps my most unpopular opinion, my most negative opinion, my hottest take that is a negative take about all Final Fantasy music. I'll ask the question first. It comes in from Axel, who says, hoping you guys got an airship-themed episode coming up.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah, we've discussed it. Drew, you were gonna say something?
Yeah. What's your problem, man?
What you got against airships, brother?
If I had to pick a category of music to put at the bottom, look, here, I'll say a couple of things now. Especially when I was younger, I found most airship music to be incredibly hokey and cheesy. I've gone back and listened to them all in preparation for this question, and I stand by that assessment. I just like them now, but they've all got this similar vibe of, like, halfway or 2/3 into the story, your characters get to feel like anime heroes, and the bump and bass line, and we talked about Neverending Story, and, like, I like them more than I used to. But I have never once in my life put on a playlist of Final Fantasy airship music. Town music, 100 times. Battle music, millions of times. Airship themes, I just like, it's fine. I tend to skip them when going through the soundtracks. Sorry. But
before I give my... Oh, you have something more?
That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be fascinating to do an episode on them. In fact, it might even make it more fascinating. So we still should.
Ira, what was your 2 cents on it?
I think when Drew says hokey, I tend to think earnest, enthusiastic heroism. Like, they really are going to try to do the right thing for the right reasons, and I can appreciate that. It might be hokey. It might even be literarily shallow. I can speak. It's fine. But that, like Drew said, that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. It probably means we should talk about it.
I would love to do an episode on them. And for, like, context, so I lead the band Airship Overdrive, which is all about video game covers on guitar effects, right? And part of why I named the band Airship Overdrive was because of the moment in so many of those Final Fantasy games where you get the airship, and it's just like this moment of, like, freedom, and you're just like, oh, I can go wherever I want in this world now and find all the cool villages and places. I'm actually kind of in Drew's camp, though. I'm not a huge fan of most of the airship themes in Final Fantasy. They sound some reason. The blackjack theme from 6 is like, it's fine.
It's fine. I think I decided my favorite was the one from 5. So if we return to it, Axel, we can rehash some of this, but that'll be fun. It'll be different than our standard episodes where we just sit here and say the words genius and oh my God. It's a slightly different thing.
Yeah, put it on the short list of ones to do soon, because I do want to do it because of that exact reason of like, let's dive into music we maybe all don't like and praise as much as the others.
Sure. And then Ira can tell us why it's super awesome and fun, and that's good too. The last one from Discord, and Eli, we're definitely not going to do this right now, but it does allow me to float an idea for future episodes, because he asked, could we collectively come up with the top 5 melancholy Final Fantasy songs? We talked about melancholy on a recent episode. I don't know that we could do that right now, and I know Ira is disinclined to rank things, but I do think it would be fun in the future if we tried somehow.
Tier list.
It would be it's always an interesting exercise to say what moves you or doesn't. Obviously, music is so subjective that it's hard to state definitively, but I do think it would be fun to say, we three collectively, what do we think are the 5 to 10 pieces of music that most embody melancholy in Final Fantasy, or that or even if we wanted to go by the categories we've done, what are the top 5 overworlds or battles or whatever? People do stuff like that all the time. Ira and I have often tried to err on the side of, it's all great, don't rank things because that's mean, even though I do top 10 lists on YouTube. So I don't know, what do you think?
I'm definitely not good at ranking things. My brain just doesn't work that way. I've said it before. I'm happy to engage with the ones that pop up to mind first, especially with because I really like a good melancholic theme, in Final Fantasy or Studio Ghibli or whatever else comes about. So I'm certainly up for it as a subject.
Yeah, I would do it as like a challenge. And I'm trying to think now of even like if I had to on the spot be like, what are some good melancholy songs from Final Fantasy? And the only one I can think of that we haven't talked about on the pod yet is in Final Fantasy X. There's a variation of the Suteki Dane theme that I think is called the Dream Must End, the Dream Ends. It's called something like that.
Yeah.
And it's this very like dour setting of that melody, but also in a strange way very like uplifting, which is kind of what melancholy can be, where it's like everything is down and drab, but you still keep going somehow. Yeah, I mean, make a note of it. I'd be curious to see what I can even find.
Off the top of my head, Somnus from Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, goodness gracious.
Yeah, but we'd have to think on that.
The end of 16, but 10 was the first place I went to, was Xanarkin, and that pop song that I like, 1,000 Words, is, I mean, it's very poppy, but it's also very, gee whiz.
Hold on to thoughts about singy songs and pop songs. We're gonna come back to that later. But yeah, there are some good ones, and we would definitely have to, like I said, Eli, we're not going to do that today, but in the future, I think that's a good idea, splitting things up into those kinds of categories. All right, Ryan, I know you've got a few other questions for us now that you wanted to bring to the table. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I had some folks who reached out to me either over Blue Sky or some Instagram messages, email, etc. And I've got a handful here that we'll go through, and I'll kind of pose them in a way where we'll first ask Drew and Ira, as the quote unquote lay person musicians in the room, see what they think, and then I'll give my person with 2 degrees in music response as well. So the first question, this comes from Daniel, and I had to start with this one because it's so to the point and so good. Daniel asks, why do so many games combine the most beautiful music with the most awful level type, water levels?
Excellent.
That is an excellent question. That's incredibly true, right? I don't know that it's something we come up against in Final Fantasy a lot, because water levels are just a different colored background for the RPG stuff that we're doing. It's not like in Mario, you're like, oh, come on. Mega Man, they're the worst in Mega Man by far,
because there's spikes everywhere and your gravity's all messed up.
Yeah.
And that tracks too, because Bubble Man's theme is a banger.
That's weird that you say that, because I'm literally playing some music for a little side thing from Mega Man 2 like today as we're recording this.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think it's because water is pretty, and watercolors are especially pretty. And like you said, throwing your gravity off is hard. The hardest water level I can think of is that damn Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game from the Nintendo.
It's like Turtles in Time or Turtles 2, whatever one it is.
It was exhaustingly hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple.
I just sent a link in the chat here, and this is one of my favorite water themes ever. I see Drew is already like ecstatically just like, yay! Give us a listen and see what you think. So that, of course, is the Dire Dire Docks / Jolly Roger Bay theme from Super Mario 64, one of the best water themes ever. And it's true, where we take this really nice, calming music, which in this case, they're achieving that by basically applying a low-pass filter to the music, where it's a lot of the high ranges are cut out of the EQ. But also just like having this, the whatever kind of electric piano that they're playing this on, it has this natural kind of like ebb and flow feel to it, where you hear like the low end kind of come in like a wave hitting the shore and then going back. Da, 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 da. And so it just gives you that feeling of being like cocooned in safety in water, right? Like in a very safe water environment. I don't know, to get to Daniel's exact question, why do so many games combine these with the most insanely infuriating level type? I don't know, but I will say, please send any like relatively lesser known water themes my way, because I'm always down to hear more of it.
I think there's something to be said also for when you stick your head underwater, sound feels different. And if you get too far deep in the ocean, you run into monsters, which is true also in this level. That giant eel that zaps out there and tries to eat you is scary, and you can't move as fast.
Did anybody else, when they were 9 years old playing this, freak out when they saw the eel come out?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'm a little older than you guys, but still, yes.
having flashbacks over here. The only other thing that I want to say, because we were just talking about ranking things, was I'm very happy to say that I believe that Uematsu is the greatest composer in video game history, and I would just say scoring in the last 30 to 40 years of anything. I do think Koji Kondo is better at water music.
Yeah, I mean, he's had the means to make water music, because like you said, Final Fantasy quote unquote water music is just like, oh, you're on a beach, that's the closest you're gonna get, or you're just like in an underwater dungeon. You don't really get that feeling. Even in Final Fantasy X, where you actually do like swim around, the music is frequently like stressful when you're underwater.
7 has that good submarine piece, but that's like the only one I can think of that's definitely underwater music.
Self-plug, definitely go check out my cover of the, what's it called, the Secrets of the Ocean, or Secrets of the Sea. There's a million different translations for it. I love that piece. It's so good. It's got those 7 chords everywhere. Anyways, next question I've got pulled up here. This is from Marissa. Marissa says, when I was in high school orchestra, my teacher would only use numbers when referring to things like rhythm beats, but I hear you use them for notes all the time, or chords, ? Why not use regular note names? Great question. What do you guys think?
I remember the circle of fifths, and we had to memorize it, and it was hard, and I don't know. I remember, and then there was like circle of fourths if you really wanted to be rude, and then we would go backward and forward. I remember do, re, mi, re, do, and so on. Which I think has numbers associated with it also. But that's not an actual answer.
Drew, do you have any thoughts?
I do. This is the exact delineation between someone like me who has written anywhere from 30 to 50 pieces of music, some of which are musically interesting, most of which are not, and somebody like Ryan. And there's a pretty big gap there, but if you're looking for, like, as I became a musician, I thought about it exactly the way Marissa's talking about. I'm playing an A chord, I'm playing a C chord, I'm playing a G chord, minors, majors, those kinds of things I knew. Even as somebody who grew up playing the French horn and thinking of the notes that I was playing one at a time, I thought about them in terms of letters. I never did quite grasp as a young musician what Ira was just talking about, right? The circle of fifths and understanding. And even as I got into it more and would play with people who were a lot better than me, and they would say, okay, we're on the 1 chord, we're on the 5 chord, I would get a little bit lost. But it also was clear to me that had I learned the language, had I gotten to that place, I would have been able to hang in on jams with musicians who were much better than me, where a lot of times I would have to go, okay, we've gone past my ability. I'm just going to step out and listen. If I had understood this specific concept better, knowing which chords to go to on the circle of fifths, how everything relates to each other, I could have been a professional musician, you know?
Yeah. So half of what you just said, I'm going to actually get to in the very next question, which is that concept of like a shared language, right? And I'll wait until our next question before I dive into that. But the other part is the whole concept of like, hey, I think of it as like a G chord, you know, why are you referring to these things in numbers, right? And these two concepts of like numbers being the primary language sometimes and just using it as a language, they kind of go hand in hand. So I'm going to describe this in a way that hopefully gives some context, right? The number 2, as an example, only means something because the number 1 exists. And the number 3 only means something because the number 2 exists. And you can kind of extrapolate from that, right? In music, there are numbers used everywhere because you are constantly measuring things in relation to another thing. And that can be weird in a podcast, especially because when you don't see what I'm talking about, if I say like a 1 chord, that means nothing to someone that is just like not really a quote unquote musician, a capital M musician, right? But I know that if I'm playing like in a song that's in the key of, let's say, G major, and I play a G chord, well, a 1 chord is a triad built off of the first note in the scale we're in. So by simply saying the 1, that's relative to G, right? And the people that are in the room or looking at a piece of music with me, they know what I'm talking about. But that 1 chord contains the first and third and fifth note of the scale, but we don't call it G, B, and D because when you start talking about the way that this chord then moves or the melody moves to other things, it gets very messy very quickly to describe it all in, oh yeah, it goes up from G to E and then it goes down to D, but then we have this borrowed chord with the flat or D flat in there. And it gets very, very messy because if you don't remember what key you're in, it falls apart. But if I know that we're all in whatever major key it is, you can use numbers and just discuss it in that shared language that way. Similarly, you can take this even farther if you go into things like inversions. And I was going to do this thing when I saw this question come up where I was going to like write out a obtrusively convoluted sentence that was mostly numbers describing something. I never got around to it, but like there's inversions, which is like how you can then reorganize the notes in that chord. So if we have like a G major, which is GBD, I could also play DGB. And that's an inversion, a second inversion. And you can get really screwy where someone can take this chord, which is a 1 flat 7, and you could call it a 1-4-2 chord because from the bottom note, which is an F natural here, there is a second and a fourth in the key above it. And then you add your 5, which is actually a 6th above in these weird ways, and things get very screwy very quickly. So if someone were to say something like, oh yeah, in this scenario here, the 3 of the 1-4 chord, or sorry, the 3 of the 1-4-2 chord acting as a secondary dominant to the proper 4 coming into the next thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it gets very screwy. So if you're at home listening to me using all these numbers and you're like, what are these numbers he keeps talking about? It should be note names. It's all relative. And I fully agree that if you're not looking at what I'm seeing on like paper when I use a term, or if you don't have that background experience of like, oh yeah, I know what like a flat 6 chord is, don't feel like you can't be a part of this conversation. It's just one next level that's in a musician's language, and hopefully you can kind of glean something from that. But the most important thing is just it's a shared language, and at the end of the day, once you know it, it's a way easier way to talk about the nitty-gritty bits of music.
Cool.
If that helps at all.
Right, and there's a recent episode on our Final Fantasy IX series where Ira and I, and this happens a lot, we're doing our best to describe the architecture and the art, and like neither one of us are artists or architects, and you can't not talk about the visuals of Final Fantasy, but there's some point where you just go like, we're on a podcast trying to describe what we're seeing, and that there's always that weird disconnect there. So I feel your pain, but I think you do great with the numbers as someone who hangs in there at times, honestly. It's just like, okay, I think I'm with what he's saying. It's a good tool to have around. I think it's another way to think of it.
Yeah. Next question. This is from their screen name was just Sweater Boy. So hello, Sweater Boy. Sweater Boy asks, and this relates to Drew's thing about like shared language and whatnot. A few of my friends play in a jazz group at our college. I went to pick up one of them once and showed up right as the group started up their last song, which seemed like a quote for fun song to end the day. Someone called it out, and without even pulling out any sheet music, they played this song together for like 7 minutes. What is this magical power where they all remembered every note of this seemingly random song? Do all musicians have some kind of sphere grid of memorized songs in their brains that they unlock over time? Love the pod, Sweater Boy. So let me ask you guys, what do you think about like some jazz folks get together and they just say, hey, let's play, Autumn Leaves. Here we go. And they just go. What do you think? I
was never very good at jazz band, but I was pretty good, for a high schooler, pretty good at marching band. And wind ensemble. And once I wasn't a very good sight reader, but once I had practiced the piece for a couple weeks, I had it down and I knew how to do it. And I had some of it memorized. And so as you were warming up before class, as someone started going on whatever their solo was, because I was a low brass player, I was usually more of a support. I was the white mage of the ensemble, right? I was the support piece. And so I just knew my part and I could play it. I couldn't do that now, but I've got plenty of songs where my part of it or certain parts of it just run through my head. The one I was thinking of a moment ago for no particular reason was and so I'll just have these, some of it's just worn in my head, like the rhythm of the story, like we would talk about when we talked about the Ninja Turtles movie, the rhythm of the speech patterns and the music and the sound effects and the visuals just gets worn in my head. I don't know that that's quite the same as a jazz musician be able to riff on whatever, but that's my version of it.
Drew?
So this will be one of the very few times that I toot my horn a little bit here on this one. So this is one of the very few things that I was pretty good at. Now, I will say always again in that support role. I was either white mage or like a green mage. I was definitely casting support magics here. And I could hold down, so I play mostly rhythm guitar. And so I could hold down, say, the basics for a 12-bar blues. That was something that I was taught very early on, which is a form that once you know it, you can just kind of start playing, and other people who understand that form can layer on top of you. And I was almost always that first layer of like, I'm just going to do this. Maybe I'll change it up rhythmically and do whatever. The 4-person band that I was in never really improvised at all. The 2-person band that I was in for a while was almost exclusively improvisation. We once played a piece that was a vamp on 2 chords for about 20 minutes in a packed bar. And then when we finished, there was one guy at the bar that was like, yes!
Yeah.
I'm glad someone listened to all 20 minutes of that. But the big key for me was always listening and responding. There are a lot of little clues. If you're intuitive about music, you can know when somebody's about to amp up into something bigger, so you need to grow. But there's a lot of listening, understanding the forms, and in a way it becomes like a conversation. You don't necessarily know what the next person's going to say, but when they do, you can respond to it in a fun and interesting way. And so it was always my favorite part of music making. We were never the tightest group, but we would always say, hey, some musicians go up there and they try to remember it in front of people. We go up there and we create something absolutely new and different every single time. So there's my thing.
So Drew gets 2 points for queuing up some of my segues already. The first one is the whole thing of like a 12-bar blues, right? Do either of you remember in the movie Back to the Future, before they play Johnny Be Good, Marty says something to the band? Do you guys remember roughly kind of what he says?
No, not exactly, but there's a similar scene in Blues Brothers 2000 where they turn to the band and they say this thing in this key and keep it this. Right?
Yes, I know in the first Blues Brothers they play Rawhide and he's like, let's play an A good country key, right? Yeah. And in Back to the Future, when they want another song and Marty's playing on the Under the Sea prom type thing, and he says, hey, here's an upbeat blues in B. And that's all he says. And then he says, like, try to keep up or something. Right. And when he says blues in B, well, you're already assuming everyone in your band has a shared language. And they know that when you say blues in B, you probably mean a blues, 12-bar blues form in B major, which is actually like B mixolydian, but that gets into the weeds of stuff. But it's in B, right? For the sports people in the room, I'm going to put Drew on the spot here. And let's say you go to play a game of pickup basketball. What's usually one of the first things that, you know, you get maybe, let's say 8 people are on a court together and there's like at a gym or something. And someone says, hey, you want to play some pickup? What are some of the first things that someone will then either say or ask?
You mean like splitting up into teams, like who's going to be on what team? And yeah. First of all, you got to decide that. You got to figure out who's going to play what position, because, you know, you got to put the tall guy down by the basket. That's me. That was always my job. Hey, tall kid, go stand down there and don't let them score. If they do, it's your fault. What? Got by you, slow foot. Sorry, that got, did that get too specific? Yeah, those are all the things that you do when you get out there too, right? And if you've got a good group of friends, you try to equally distribute the talent a little bit so you don't have one team just crush the other kids. But yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of know what to expect, right? Once you've kind of set the ground rules. Are we going to play teams? Is it going to be like a round robin one-on-one tournament? What's our points that we're playing up to? Are we playing with 3 points? Are we playing just, you know, one point per hoop or whatever?
Call your own fouls.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of set these things up from the beginning and then you go forward in those rules, right? And with music, I'm going to kind of assume here that Sweater Boy's friend is part of like a jazz combo, not so much like a jazz, like a big band, maybe like between 3 and 7 people, right?
The Sweatermen.
So when he's asking,
say what? The Sweatermen. I assume it's the name of the
group. So I'm going to assume it's like a jazz combo because you wouldn't just call up a tune with a big band of like 20 people, right? And so when you have these things, when you have this like this shared language of jazz standards and the basics of music theory and jazz harmony and everything, and I'm talking like the bare bones basics of like what's a 12-bar blues form, then you can play a 7-minute song out of something that might only be 24 measures on the page. You can easily extend that out, just like Drew was talking about improvising over the same 2 chords for 20 minutes straight. That can easily be been done. The other part of it, though, is when someone says, oh, we're going to play it in this key. If someone says, like, you know, Johnny Be Good, hey, blues in B. Well, if you've got a good enough foundation of musical knowledge, you can play any melody you know or can even hear in your head in any of the 12 relative keys that it's in. I'm going to put myself on the spot a little bit here and hopefully not make a fool of myself to be edited out shortly. But can Ira or Drew, can one of you give me either a Final Fantasy song or like a children's lullaby type song, just a melody that I hopefully know, but don't sing it. Don't play it or sing it.
How about just the main Final Fantasy melody, the main theme of Final Fantasy?
Perfect. So the main theme, I know in my head, I have no sheet music in front of me. Drew and Ira can attest. I'm not changing any pages or pulling up anything. My hands are shown on the screen here. But in my head, I can hear that first part. Da, 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 right? And because I know the relativeness, I know it's a note and then a perfect fourth above, and then a major second above that, and then a perfect fifth down, and then a flat 7 up or a minor 7th above that to the next note. I know, again, numbers, the relativeness between them. So now, since Drew gave us the song, Ira, give me a key to play that in. There's only 12 to pick from.
E.
E. So if we're playing this song, I know, because I can hear it in my head with how the harmony works, it starts on the first note of the chord. And therefore, because I know how the key E major is structured without having the music in front of me, I can go, okay, here's the note E. I'm going to play that song now. And you could just keep going if I wanted to, right? But it's because I have that shared language of music theory that I could then just do that on the spot. Play the Final Fantasy theme in E major. That's a skill you develop. Much like if someone said, hey, can you just, describe to me the directions to get to the store from your house, assuming you're using English, your skill set of English is strong enough that you can just do that. No one had to have it on paper for you to read off of, right? It's the same concept. When you go from there, then you go into things that talk about like improvisation, and Drew was talking about being able to sense kind of when someone's going to go louder or softer, or you'll use like hand signs or even like a little nod frequently in a jazz setting to be like, oh, okay, back to the head. And then we all play the head together. Someone's harmonizing sometimes, but it's a language you develop over time. So if you walk into your friend's rehearsal again sometime soon and you're just like, okay, they called up a jazz standard, blue bossa, and someone said blue bossa in D minor, and everyone just played it, that's how. Because chances are they know the song blue bossa, they know what D minor is, they know roughly what the chord changes to blue bossa are, and they have the sensibilities of playing with other people in a jazz combo setting. Put it all together and you can make a 20-minute song on the spot.
Isn't music magical and fun?
It's so fun, you guys. Do either of you have any questions like to follow up on that or anything to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Let's just go to the next question then.
Okay. I got 3 more and they'll be, I think, pretty quick. So, okay. First, Sasha here. I am a junior in high school right now, and I want to write music for video games someday. How do I do this? Awesome. I play cello in the orchestra, and I love video game music, but I've never written much music myself. Also, please do music from Minecraft on the show, Sasha. We might do Minecraft someday. I can't promise or anything. But to your question primarily about writing music for video games, here's what I'll start off with as far as like some career advice. There are very, very, very few people that actually make a full-time living writing music for video games. And even people that have written like really, really great soundtracks for 1 or 2 games, they don't retire off of that. Like they're still doing other jobs, whether it's music related or not music related. And to be completely honest, Sasha, if you're just now as a junior in high school getting into composition, if you haven't written much as it is, you have a pretty big hill in front of you. But what I will recommend is find music that you like and do arrangements of it. Learn the basics of arranging music and learning again, back to that shared language thing of how music is structured, whether or not you're going to take formal lessons and college courses of music theory, or if you're just going to teach yourself, whatever the case is. It shouldn't be gated to anybody based on whatever you want to pursue and whatever financial cost might be involved, right? But you got to start somewhere. And the way that you start with learning like how to cook a meal, like for example, if you wanted to learn how to cook a really good like beef stew, well, where do you start before you just make your own beef stew recipe?
With existing recipes.
Go to the cookbook.
Exactly. You go to the cookbook and you make whatever someone else has hopefully proven well that it actually works as a good beef stew. Same thing with music, and all the great musicians from Mozart all the way up to our common, pop stars and everything these days, they inculcated themselves. They surrounded themselves with good music that was in a similar style that they enjoyed. There's a reason why you don't have the guys from Tool writing disco music. They didn't want to write disco, and so they surrounded themselves with other styles that sounded something like what they wanted to make. And then from there, once you've kind of got the basics, join some game jams. I write in at least 1 or 2 game jams every year, and there's a chance for people to get together. You make a video game of a certain theme or guideline within usually between 2 to 5 days, sometimes 2 weeks, and just join some. Find a Discord server where one of these events are hosted and just say, hey, I don't know anything about music or whatever your level of music is, and just say, I want to write some music. And you might find a team that's like, oh yeah, we'll take someone that's just now learning how to write music and just do something. It doesn't have to be for money or to get paid, because there's going to be a lot of time spent, just like with our sports people in the room here, all the time at the batting cages or all the time shooting free throws on your own, whatever. before you get to that point where you're really doing something quote unquote productive, right? You can still be a musician for music's sake.
And I think that applies to all sorts of art, hobbyist, professional, whatever it is. I write all the time. I've written several novels, and at first, I when I was in middle school, high school, I thought, oh, I'd like to be a mainstream published author one day. And I guess if that happened, that'd be cool and all, but I don't do it for that reason. I do it because I really like it. Like the job I do to get paid, and I think I've gotten pretty good at that also. But my hobbies, I think it's okay to have the hobby and have it just be for the love of the game. Like if you want to shoot for getting paid for it, awesome, go for it. But I also think it's, I think it's good and another valid route to do it because you like doing it. Our father, he was a oil painter. I've got lots of his pieces here in my house. Drew's got one like right above his monitor there. Mom's got several at her place, and he did it not because he was trying to get paid for it or get it in an art show somewhere. He did it because he loved it, and I think it's okay to. It took me several years to realize I didn't care to get traditionally published. What I cared about was the writing and the editing.
Love that. Like seriously, I wish more people who were interested in art viewed it from that same perspective of like, you don't have to make this your job or make thousands of dollars a year as a side hustle. You can just make art for art's sake. And that's a very human, authentic experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's the podcast that we do. We've managed to get some money from the Patreon over the years, a little bit from podcast apps, but it's not much. I've always done it for the love of the game, as it were. I do podcasts I am a little bit of a mess on this particular question. I might not be the right person to ask because I am that guy who like took his hobby of loving sports, made it my profession. No, you don't make any money doing that. I make enough to get by. It's ups and downs. That part of the grind isn't great, but I also get to watch and write about and talk about baseball for a living, and it affords me enough time on the side to be a mostly full-time dad and to do stuff like this. To decide 5 months ago that we were going to start doing this show all the time, and something I've always wanted to do, talk really in depth about Final Fantasy music beyond my own capacity. And so it's like, yeah, sometimes when you chase your dream, you end up with way less money than you thought or hoped or wanted. But you do end up living a life of your own creation. And among people that I know, and Ira can correct me or not on this, I feel like I live very much a life of my own creation, for better, for worse, all the way around. I have done this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. So all that to be said, Sasha, you got some work to do, but again, don't
kick ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't kick ass.
And don't limit yourself on one goal. Just see what's out there. Just start poking around. Let's see, I've got two more here. This next one, this will be a good question. I'm curious what you guys will say. This is from Jaden. Jaden asks, what's the difference between a note, a tone, and a pitch?
Oh, no. Oh, God. A hue, a color, and a brightness, right? These are, I know what all those words mean in layman's terms, but man, you start getting into the technical terms of a specific field and it can get very specific.
Let me do my best. All right, here we go. A note is the specific thing that you say with the letter. It's got a designation. Hey, designation. That's fun. Right, an A note. But if you go up an octave, you've gone up in pitch, you can play a different A note that's a different pitch. Is that right? We good there? So that might be a difference between a note and a pitch.
You're actually like pretty darn spot on. And then what's a tone?
A tone, from the best of my understanding, I don't know that tone and timbre are interchangeable, but it's more like the sound. So an A note on a guitar is going to sound different from an A note on a piano versus an A note on a violin. So that would be your tone, right?
Yeah, like Drew pretty much nailed it. Like that's the difference is. So a note, like you said, is just like the term or the name we give within the octave series of Western music. So if I play like a B flat and then a higher B flat and then a higher B flat, well, those are all just the note B flat. but specifically the pitches are like the actual hertz frequency of what is coming out. Like what would a dial read as far as vibrations per second from the thing you are producing, right? And so we have things like naming the octaves. So like C4 is the one everyone knows, it's middle C. That's C4. But if you go down an octave, that's C3. And then below that is B flat 2 that I played a minute ago. And you can expand from there, right? So a pitch is essentially a combination of note and octave. It describes a specific part of the sound spectrum. And then tone can mean a lot of things, but the general one is what Drew said, where it's like the timbre of the note. It's the quality of the thing you are hearing. A piano, if I play a C major chord, and then I randomly turn my piano dial to something else, let's see what we get, and I play that same C major, oh, that's a drum set.
Leaving that in.
Or whatever this one is. That's some kind of like guitar harmonic, I think. Yeah. That's a different tone, right? If I spin the wheel again, probably up into the synthesizer range. That's like a synth viola kind of sound, right? And they all give a slightly different timbre or tone, or just what does the note sound like? And yes, you can actually break these things down quantitatively if you look at them on certain spectrograms and everything, but you're getting way too nitty gritty than just to simply say, oh, it's got like a bright tone, or it's got a very harsh tone, or it's got a very raspy tone, or a pure tone, a woody tone, and you can get into any instrument or sound and go from there. But the basics are what Drew said. A note is how we define notes within an octave. A pitch is a combination of the note and which octave you are playing it in, or the frequency, the hertz that you're hearing. And then tone is kind of a catch-all for just the quality of the sound. Yeah, simple enough, right?
Love it.
And then the last one I have here, this is a question from, just identify as Splash. So Splash asks, people often get these goosebump chills when they hear really cool music. Do professional musicians still get that, or have you built up some kind of tolerance to it? Do any video games give you those goosebumps still? From Splash. And I've got a sample that I'm going to play that you guys probably wouldn't expect, but let me ask what you guys think. As a professional musician who I've heard, I'm going to guess at least 6 or 7 times more like just music by minute than you guys have in my life. Do you think I still get those goosebumps, or just generally musicians?
I think you probably get them more because you have more opportunities to, and you recognize more things that are interesting and or clever and or awe-inducing than those who are not as read in on the theory.
Interesting. Drew?
My answer was just yes, but he said more words. We're flipping roles this time.
The short answer is yes, and Ira hit it on the head, because when you hear things or you pick up on things that the average person doesn't pick up on, or you see something kind of, or you expect something coming in a musical piece, when it finally lands, like I'm getting it just now, like thinking about certain pieces of music, like I'm getting those goosebumps, which if you're curious, it's called frisson, Frisson is a fancy term for those goosebump chills when you hear really good music. The one in Final Fantasy that always gets me, and I know we've talked about it on the podcast in one of our like tone setter intro music episodes. You guys remember the one that I mentioned, this is a long time ago now, where I was like, every time I hear this, and I've heard it live on a Distant Worlds concert, every time I hear it, I get the chills. Do either of you remember?
It's been so long since tone setters and intros. I'm trying to remember which one you picked.
This one in particular, it is either the original or the remake, but the remake is the one that really gets me, of the intro of Final Fantasy VII, when you scan out from Midgar and you just hear this massive bum ba ba bum 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 bum. There's something about the way it creeps in and you see it coming and then it just hits. And I remember specifically the Distant Worlds concert where they just did 7 remake. They played kind of through the 7 remake series plus some like intergrade type stuff. I remember they had the video playing alongside it, and the chills that went through me where like you could have like run a finger and felt every single bump on my arm. But the short answer to the question of like, do you still get that? Absolutely, yes. Professional musicians, we still get that feeling. It's one of the reasons why we do this kind of thing for a living. And let me ask you guys before I share the clip of a piece that you probably wouldn't expect to give chills. Do either of you have any good pieces, video game or otherwise, that's like whenever you hear it, it's just every time, chills?
I like it when they build up to the Superman thing, where you don't get the bum right away. Was bum ba bum ba da, and they sort of pull, they stretch it out, a bit, and when you finally get to the heroic, the enthusiastic, earnest heroism of Superman, I love that very much.
I mean, I'm sure I had several. Aerith's theme was the first thing that came to mind. There's a certain build, and in the orchestral versions, there's a moment where the whole thing builds up in a very swelling yada-dum, yada-dum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum. And there's a big open piece of space, and then every instrument in the world comes in on bum, 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 bum. And I feel it in my entire body every time. It's
funny you mentioned that exact piece because I'm not a religious person in any sense. And one of the few experiences I've ever had in my life that I would consider like as close to a religious experience as I might ever experience was I was in undergrad. I was walking across campus one day in spring, and I had Aerith's theme, the big orchestral version of it playing in my earphones, my earbuds. And it got to that part with the really big climax, and I looked up, and out of the blue, all of the cottonwood trees were like snowing, quote unquote, around me. And it was like, I'm getting that free song just thinking about it. And it had that moment of like, they just hit at the right time. And it kind of made me think about like, you know, Aerith and how she like falls under the water and everything and all the things that happened with that game. And it was just like, whoa, this is an experience right here as I'm like getting surrounded by these little cottonwood, you know, seeds that are like fluffy white snowflakes falling around me and everything from out of the blue. That's a really good one. The frisson, if you're curious, by the way, do you guys know why, whether it's music related or like other related stuff, why we even get goosebumps like that?
Nope.
Especially good turn of phrase in a book. I was waiting for this particular payoff for a while. That's why I get it.
The primary reason is a sudden change in sensation. So it's kind of like if you go from like from warm to suddenly cold, you'll get goosebumps. If you go from a sense of feeling very safe to suddenly feeling very like afraid or uncertain, that can cause goosebumps, hence the book series by the same name. And in this case with music, it's some sort of massive change very suddenly. Typically, that's not always a hard and fast rule, but generally it's because of a big change that suddenly happens. And that Final Fantasy VII remake fanfare I was just talking about is a perfect example because they lead you up to it, but it's a very sudden bum 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 bum. Also, I got to plug Holst's The Planet's Suite, the Jupiter Movement, my favorite piece of all time. There are 3 or 4 certified, you will get the goosebumps listening to this song moments in it. But the one that I wanted to share, which before you play it, do you have any guesses? I'll give you a hint. It's from a fighting game.
Fighting game?
Oh. From Street Fighter II Turbo, the new challengers. It's got my favorite fighting game soundtrack of all time.
It's not exactly a Street Fighter game.
Like one of the Capcom crossovers.
Ira might be on it. Go ahead and play
Marvel
it.
versus Capcom.
Wanna take you for a ride. 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 Wanna take you for a ride.
That's the whole piece.
Wow.
And for some reason, I can't quite like figure out why. I think it's because of the rhythmic syncopation between that low Barry sax sound and like the trumpets and the vocals. There's something about it. It's like 4 bars on loop. If you're curious, those at home, that is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's the character select theme, which is called I Want to Take You for a Ride. There's a fantastic 8-bit big band version of it out there. High recommendation to give it a listen. But for some reason, that like rhythmic syncopation going back and forth, it just gets me every single time, and I don't know why.
Love it. Oh man, I thought of a lot. We got to go back to Eli's top 5 songs that just give me chills. A lot from 7. I thought of Cosmo Canyon again as well as we were going through there. There are so many. We'll have to go back through sometime.
Yeah,
I love that. Though. I love that piece just gets you vibing. I love that.
For some reason. Are there any other questions either from you two here or any others that might have been coming in from listeners that we want to look at today?
We've got a few more from Spotify and YouTube. I want to start with this one because it's fun. This is, again, not really a question, but I wanted us to listen to it because it reiterates something we talked about on our very first episode. Nick Woodward wrote, first of all, the Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack is absolutely peak composing in my eyes, and I love hearing deeper analysis about it. Interestingly, when Ryan asked where else we hear the psycho chords, when you talked about those, he had a thought for a different piece, and then you ended up going to Legendary Beast. So I said that was going to come back today, and we played some Legendary Beast. But Nick Woodward, when you mentioned the psycho chords, thought you were going to bring up a different piece of Final Fantasy VIII music. Do you have a guess as I bring it up?
Oh, it's 8, because I know 7, which, spoilers, we're going to talk about very soon, has a psycho theme to start a song from 7. From 8, another one that has the psycho theme, which if you're listening at home, it's like the ring, 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 ring kind of sound. Top of my head, I can't think of another one in 8 specifically. Aside from, hang on, oh wait, it just came to me. It's in oh shoot, it's one of the more like upbeat, like rock type pieces. I can hear it. What? Oh, I can't place the melody though. What? Just play it. I can't remember, but I can hear it in my head. Yep. Yep, I should have known that. I had it in my head.
We'll have to do a boss battle. We don't have time to dive into that piece as much as it deserves today. But yeah, he sent that to me. And I was like, oh yeah, there they are.
Yeah, straight up.
Like, that's pretty cool. So appreciated that from Nick on Spotify. We got a few from Red Spade on YouTube, who is like the Thomas of YouTube. So Thomas had a ton of comments on Patreon. Red Spade was all over YouTube, mentioned that they also loved Mystic Quest and that they also played Tecmo Cup, which was fun because whenever I do a deep cut like that, you never know who out there's going to know it. And when someone's like, yes, as soon as you fire Tecmo Cup, I was like, cool, a kindred spirit is out there. So there were a few, again, more of an observation here, but we kind of talked about it today. Red Spade mentioned that for Final Fantasy II's overworld music, we kind of talked about it being sad or oppressive and how, you open the gates of hell and everything. But they said, I find it to be more romantic, maybe even a tad motivational. And if I were to give it a longer title, it might be Midnight Romance in the Mystic Elf Garden or something like that. Even saying that it sounds almost Sailor Moony. I might have gone with Sailor Moon-ish, but I'm not going to edit you. But I thought that was an interesting comment on how, yeah, we don't all hear the exact same thing, even when we're hearing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. There's something to be said also for like just using the term like romantic or like a romance sounding thing, because that can mean a lot of different things in music particularly. It was an era of music, and it was also a way, and it still is a way to describe certain types of music. Two of my favorite cadences in the world are like the romantic ones where you have like your flat 4, which is this one right here. Hang on, off of my weird synth viola, but it kind of goes something like this. That's a very romantic sounding one. Or if you go what's called like the 5-13 chord. Again, all these numbers. What's the deal with all these numbers? That's also a very romantic sounding one. And so I'd be curious to hear more about that thought where the two overworld, is that right, what we're talking about here?
Right.
Sounds romantic. In my ear, I'm just like, that's a weird romance to have that sort of like theme play. But you could argue for it. I've heard far worse arguments in music theory.
Right. And Red Spade also had a request for us in the future, something actually several people have brought up, and we know we'll get to at some point. We just got to figure out how to do it and accept that these episodes will just be demonetized and whatever, that is what it is. When are you going to do the vocal tracks? Red Spade wants to know.
Ira, when are we going to do them? I know you want to.
I really do. I want to talk about 1,000 Words and What Can I Do For You and Stand By. Okay, here's a question I got for you, Ryan. Can you put the Final Fantasy arpeggios behind any pop song and make it into a Final Fantasy song?
It wouldn't be that hard because it's literally a one. So it's funny you say this and you're talking about Stand By Me, because Stand By Me has that kind of like 50s, 60s, teenager in love sort of, chord progression already baked into it. If you break it down, it's just 1, 6, 4, 5. Then back to 1. And that's like a very, like, it's literally the, what's it called? Heart and Soul, I think is what it's called. That piece. It's a supremely ubiquitous chord progression. It's everywhere. You could easily put the Final Fantasy like prelude arpeggio stuff behind a lot of music, and even if they don't line up exactly with that same progression, it'll line up closely enough that it's just like, oh yeah, this fits in like no problem. It really is that like flexible.
Cool.
Fun. All right, here's another interesting one that a couple people pointed out. I think you even pointed it out on a later episode, but that when you played, this comes from, Arc Elf 7 on YouTube. When you played Eyes on Me with a minor at the end, it sounds like Terra's theme. Can you explain to us like how those notes are similar and why that's not Uematsu stealing from himself?
For those listening at home, and again, this is back to that musical language thing. I'm going to play a song without having the notes in front of me. So Eyes on Me, I'm going to play this in just good old C major, has this melody, which with the harmony, right? And if you put that in a minor key, C minor instead, we can hear very closely Terra's theme. Right? So the question was, is Uematsu stealing from himself, or like why is it that way? This is kind of like saying, back to our beef stew recipe analogy, oh, you used carrots in your recipe. Well, Julia Childs also did, therefore you're plagiarizing Julia Childs. Right? You see where I'm kind of going?
Love it.
Those
Perfect.
Melodies are built off of the same basic structure of a standard scale in whatever major or minor mode you're in, focused around the 1, 3, and 5. In fact, if you take out just that middle note, the D there, the entire thing is built off of chord tones, 1s, 3s, and 5s. 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3. And Terra's theme is the same thing in minor. 1, 2, 3, 5, 3. And that's just how music works. You really can't plagiarize that, and you really can't like trademark it unless there's other stuff going on. Much in the same way that me putting carrots in my own beef stew recipe wouldn't be like, oh, Sally down the road also does this. You stole that idea from Sally. And this is where we get into like trademark law and copyright patent law, which I do love talking about if we ever want to go down that rabbit hole.
John Fogerty playing his own music on the stand for getting sued for plagiarizing himself.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that can happen. When it comes to melody, and you can think about like the court cases about like Vanilla Ice stealing Queen's doon 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 doon. You know, they're different enough, and you can get into all these sorts of discussions about that. I'd be happy to discuss it more. But the short answer is they're not even remotely close enough of a unique melody to qualify for that kind of thing. They just happen to use chord tones and go up and down a scale, which is just not enough.
I also want to quickly say for the record that I'm the one who asked about whether or not Uematsu was stealing from himself. Our question asker was just curious about the relationship. So I just thought we'd have some fun with that.
I also think there's something to be said about when you listen to an artist's work enough, or you read the same, like if you read a bunch of Arthur C. Clarke stories, you start to recognize patterns that particular author uses, or you watch a television show written by somebody and then they write another television show and they use some similar plot points or some similar phrasing, or even sometimes the same phrases. You start to uncover that particular artist's themes. Van Gogh painted a lot of paintings, but you can start to see some of his patterns and themes. And I think that's interesting also. What does this artist tend toward? And what do they write about over and over again, and what matters to them?
Yep.
Speaking of which, this next, again, more of a comment than a question, but gives us an opportunity to play another piece of Final Fantasy music that I feel like is super underrated, to the extent that I underrated it during our conversations on, we're talking about the Magitech Research Facility and Floating Continent. Nick Oleksiak Music, so he might be a musician, I don't know, left this comment about Musica Machina from Final Fantasy V being another industrial banger that predates the songs that we talked about, and also drew attention to the kind of panning that Uematsu does, which is something that I know that you've pointed out before. So I want to just play a snippet of it. If we've got thoughts, we've got thoughts. If not, it's just nice that Nick brought us another comparative piece of music.
Yeah. And for those at home that aren't sure what the word panning means in this case, if that's a new term to you, that's just left-right channel kind of going back and forth in stereo. So if you hear something that's in your left channel, if you're listening to in headphones or good, speakers, wherever you are, to the right channel, that's what panning refers to. That relates not only to the whole thing with like mechanical music, but another recent episode we discussed. Can you guys pick what I'm leaning into here?
Is it a march? Sorry.
But you're on the right track though, because it's like that thing with Shostakovich we talked about, where he wrote wartime music that sounded very like angular and mechanical and like the grinding gears of war. This, along with that kind of angular melody to start, where it's like bam, 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 bam. It's not really in a key. It's somewhat atonal until the proper melody sets in, even if it's very briefly. But yeah, this is like straight up like mechanical sounding music. And I'm sure Ira and Drew, you could probably explain in very simple terms why it sounds like that. What did you guys hear?
They used a synthesizer thingy that went, what?
Synthesizers, an unnatural sound.
It's got a very steady beat. Dugga-dunk, 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 dugga-dunk.
Very repetitive.
Noises. Did we have Hammer on Anvil? If not, there were crunchy, clangy rhythm
Definitely
noises.
crunchy clangies. Yep.
Yes, there were at least 4 or 5 crunchy clangies I heard.
That's right.
Minimum. But yeah,
over under on
like a very repetitive rhythm to it, right? Like a machine would be repetitively doing the same thing over and over again. Uematsu understands music and how to make you feel like you're in a certain place, and he's making it sound like a machine, right? I didn't hear though, I'll be honest, because I'm actually wearing headphones as we're recording. Maybe it's just how it's coming through on our streaming software, our recording software, but I didn't hear any panning on that. I did hear though delay, where it's kind of like boop, 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 and it fades away in the background. That's delay, which is different. That's just taking a sample of some sound, playing it again softer, so it sounds like it's going farther and farther away or echoing away. I didn't hear any panning though in my headphones.
Yeah, I'm listening on the wrong kind of speakers for that, but I do wonder, I feel like I remember hearing it before, that some of those shooting sounds whoop, kind of go from one ear to the other. I'm probably just not playing the correct version, but well, yeah. Either way, a very interesting piece. I'm glad that Nick brought it to us, because what a weird piece of music.
Yeah, that part of Final Fantasy V, some weird things happen. That's probably the game that is the most like starts off as like, mission 1, save a kitten, mission 20, kill a god.
Right.
Like that's the one that to me is the most like, oh, it's just, Butts or Bart's, whatever his name is in your version, with his chocobo, and they're just going off on a little adventure with some happy friends, and then things take a turn quickly.
Yeah. All right, we've got a couple more here that are pretty quick ones. Again, this was just a comment, but I couldn't not read it from point 2 with more numbers after that. On our episode on Otherworld from Final Fantasy X, wrote, the original version is something your son would thrash out in a garage band at full volume. The version with the woman singing is one your mom would listen to while cleaning the house.
Okay, question. Did your mothers have a certain song or playlist that she would play while cleaning the house? Because my mom had 2 for sure.
Yeah, baseball.
Yeah. I was trying hard to think, and he's 100% right. Sports on the radio, mostly baseball. My wife is a big reggaeton. I tend to listen to podcasts when I clean and do dishes and things like that. But if it's a cleaning day, my wife throws on reggaeton and gets it going.
For my mom, it was 2 things. It was either Gloria Estefan or ABBA. Those were the 2 things I remember hearing vividly in my head that she would have to hear it over like the vacuums or whatever she was using at the time. And then we would have blaring through the house, "You are the dancing queen." And she's like dancing while she's doing her vacuuming and stuff. And I was like a really little kid.
I'm going to test this theory, and next time I do the dishes, I'm going to be out there going, "Go now if you want it." Another room. Yeah, I loved that comment.
ABBA's good stuff. Like, honestly, I did not appreciate them as much as I should have when I was younger. These days, whenever I hear ABBA come up, I'm like, dang, that's good music. Like, that's just good pop music.
Another request, this one from Marco Suarez. I know Ryan will like this. Says, guys, you need to dedicate one episode to Octopath Traveler 1 and 2.
Yes, it's on my list for sure. I'm going to like strong arm Drew and Ira if I have to. I'm going to do at least one episode on Octopath. And actually, I have an episode idea that I'm going to pitch to Drew and Ira at some point in the near future that I'd love to do. That would be a really good take. But for those of us listening, Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 have some of the best soundtracks in gaming, not just from the past 5 or 10 years. They are phenomenally good games, both from aesthetics, music, and gameplay, and stories, and everything. Love those games.
I wanted to give a shout out to, and I have no idea how to say this name, Y Rusama or E Rusama,Yrusama, who did a solid clarification for us in the comments on our Final Fantasy V Overworld. Lets you know right there which one is Unknown Lands and which one is a new world. I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but I'm glad that there's clarification in the comments. And also asked if at some point in the future we would talk about Alma's theme from Final Fantasy Tactics. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'll keep that in mind when we talk about character themes. But he was saying particularly when it comes to mapping characters to instruments. Yeah, I think it's a great one.
I'm totally down for any and all character theme episodes. Funny enough, I actually just realized this past week. Do you guys know, or can you identify, of the kind of like typical golden era Final Fantasy games, there's one that alarmingly does not have any character themes. Can you place which one it is?
Well, Final Fantasy 1 doesn't really have, like I said, we got Matoya. That's a character theme.
1, 2, and 3 don't, but they didn't really have characters yet, so those don't really.
Yeah, it wasn't until like 3 when we got Elia's theme.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about like the 6 through 10 or 6 through 12 era. There's one that does not have character themes, and I'm not counting 11. 11's kind of its own thing.
Okay, 4 definitely does. 5 definitely does. 6 is built on its character themes. 7 does. 8 doesn't. I don't know that it has anything that says it's character themes, but the Oath is Squall's theme. Is it 8? Is 8 the one we're looking for here?
It's 8. 8 does not have character themes. There's no Selfie's theme. There's no Zell's theme. There's no Renoa's theme or Irvin's theme. it's weird because like every other game in that kind of era has something, but 8, for being as amazing as the soundtrack is, does not have named character themes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That is. That's really fascinating.
Especially since it's got like, I mean, Eyes on Me is kind of
such a character-ish thing.
Yeah.
But Eyes on Me is a duet theme.
Yeah,
It's Squall and Renoa's
Right.
theme, or it's like the theme of love in that game essentially.
Right.
Even though there's a
Or even
song
like,
called Love Grows, but there's no like Renoa theme.
Right.
right.
And the Oath is definitely Squall's theme, but it's not called that. And none of the other ones even have that. Like you just ran through the names. Like they don't even have something where you could be like, oh, if you turn your head this way and look at it, that's Zell's theme. Like, no, he just doesn't have one. That's wild.
I was trying to think, like, I came upon this thought first. I don't even remember why. Probably something about character theme episodes in the near future. But I was thinking about 8, and I was like, well, what do they play when you introduce each of the characters? And it's like, well, Squall you hear during Liber Fatale, so that doesn't really count. Zell is introduced, and you hear the Balam Garden theme playing.
Right.
Selfie's introduced, and you're just hearing the like kind of generic soft background noises in Dalit. Renoa is introduced, and it's just the music playing on the train of like the secret car or the underground place with the timber owls. You know, no one really has their own theme except for like the bad people, like the sorceress. They have themes, but the main characters don't.
You might consider Man with a Machine Gun.
Yes, some folks have said Laguna's theme should be Man with a Machine Gun. It's literally called Man with the Machine Gun.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yes, there's a definite argument for that one. Aside from
odd. Still, yeah,
isn't that weird?
Worth noting. That's really fascinating. All right, we got 3 more comments here. 2 of them are of the same variety that we sort of solicited in our snow episode. We were talking about how other parts of the world might have a different relationship to this. And Marco Suarez, who we heard from a moment ago, said, here in Australia, it depends on where you live. I live in Brisbane. So the idea of snowy music comes from what we see in movies and TV. One film that really shapes it for us is Home Alone. Hey, us too. Which we associate with Christmas and cold weather. So it's actually very similar to the idea you have. I mentioned that we have a regular listener in Australia, and Yuhan was exactly the person I was thinking of. And they came in with this response. When you mentioned the Australian listener, I assume it was me, but yeah, we have a weird relationship with winter because for us, it's actually from June to August. Yet during Christmas, which is summer for us, we still retain a lot of the traditional winter imagery in public displays. Even in winter, the only place that has snow is in the Australian Alps, which is in the southeast of the country. And a lot of the imagery there is more related to like cowboys of the American West with horse-drawn sleds and things like that. So the rest of the country, it sort of varies, but it's mostly just colder. But if I were connected to a Final Fantasy equivalent, the snowy mountains here are like Icicle Inn from Final Fantasy VII, and that it's more of a resort vibe with skiing and snowboarding in addition to, you know, a massive hydroelectric system that generates power for the region. So it's a little industrial too. Yuhan signs off. And there's Tasmania, but we don't really talk about them. Which I'm just going to further a little turf war here, I guess. You know, shots fired, I suppose.
Now I'm super interested to learn more about like Australian Christmas holiday era or time of year like traditions, because the thought of having like horse-drawn carriages in the mountains and stuff in Australia, I'm just like, what? Like this does not compute in my brain. Now I'm like super curious.
Yeah. I loved that we got those comments. People were like, I can help you out here. It's weird. Like, oh, that's fun. That's a lot of fun. And then I want to finish on this comment from Jason Glasser and play another piece of music. And the main reason I wanted to finish on it, because this was on our 4th episode, I believe it was, on towns. And this comment changed the nature of the show from here on out. So while it wasn't a question, it requires a response. Jason just wrote, there were several mentions of Zozo and you didn't play it.
I remember seeing that comment. You're right. We didn't.
And so I just wanted to say, well, first of all, let's play Zozo and let's talk about it. And then I'll have a final thought on this question. But because we actually have done it on a couple of episodes, let's listen to Zozo, man. It's earned its moment. So good.
What a weird piece, right?
What a
Yeah.
bop. What a funky, weird little bop. Ira, how come you like it so much?
I think it's cool because we kind of talked a few episodes ago about pieces that only play in certain places, and this is a similar thing to that. So I think it's cool for that reason. It's got the background rain, which I love. I think it's a bummer that the rich people kicked all the poor people out and they have to go live in the rain all the time. That's not very nice. But it also contrasts with a lot of what we've done. There's a lot of mysterious music and sort of adventure-y music, and we're gonna fight the Empire music. And then this one is just, yeah, we're kind of here vibing. You guys kicked us out of town, so we're just gonna go do our own thing.
Whenever I replay 6, I always get to Zozo and I'm just like, oh yeah, this place is in this game, because it's just such a weird departure from like everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. I love that it gets that random, like, swinging little vibe. There are a couple pieces in Final Fantasy VI that start either dark or weird or kind of contemplative or whatever, and then the B section is ba-da-na-na-na, ba-da-na-na-na, ba-ba. And you're like, okay, yeah.
Which, by the way, this song, back to our blues discussion earlier,
Yes.
kind of follows a 12-bar blues where it goes
Right?
to 1, 4, back to 1, then in your 5 chord for a while. Yeah, the Zozo theme, which is called like Slam Shuffle. Is that what it's
Slam
called?
Shuffle, which
Yeah.
I always forget until I go back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, Slam Shuffle. It has roughly a 12-bar blues, but yeah, it's got like rain in the background. It's got that weird like ghost kind of like in the background. It's just a weird piece of music in a weird place in the game.
Yeah. Also a bit of a tonal shift, I think, for the whole series in some ways. It's not as big as, say, like Otherworld or whatever, but there was a lot of, even in that game, it's orchestral music and big, even with the Super Nintendo sounds or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's just like funky rock beat, like weird kind of like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore. Everyone here's a liar.
Which, related, by the way, we are absolutely doing Dancing Mad someday.
Nice.
It might be a 2-part episode, but we're definitely doing Dancing Mad someday.
So I ultimately did just want to thank Jason for dropping that comment, because knowing myself, all it takes is the tiniest bit of encouragement. You're figuring out, we didn't know in the beginning exactly what this show was going to look and feel and be like. And in many ways, I think we're still figuring it out and open to all kinds of new and fun ideas. But I think in those early days, I was stuck on a concept of a structure and keeping it to the pieces we were talking about. And if we offhand mentioned something, I was just going to leave it like that. But for the continuity of the show, because I think it feels and sounds better, and because it's more fun, you get to hear more music. Basically, because of this comment, you'll see after episode 4, I just started editing in like, we're like, Chill Penguin? Yeah, throw it in there, dude, whatever. And we said the name of it. It's like, we're here to celebrate all of this music and the art of music making for video games. And so, to heck with my organizational sheet that is absolutely a mess at this point because of this comment. That is also your fault, Jason. But thanks for saying, like, hey, you mentioned Zozo. Wouldn't have minded hearing Zozo. And it was like, you know what? You're right. Let's throw them in there. Let's listen to music.
Is that our last comment, our last question comment?
That's the last one I got.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, thank you to everyone who listens to this. Like Drew was just saying, a lot of why, at least from my perspective, why we do this, this show is for that enjoyment of music, just trying to get, more ideas and more understanding of how music is created in the context of something we all love here, Final Fantasy games and related, games and related concepts and whatnot. Any of these questions, keep them coming. Don't feel like you have to wait for another Q&A episode to let us know, because I'm more than happy to answer any of these in whatever way is befitting for a podcast, and just to help people learn how to love music and love art and make your own art someday. I live by the motto of, play good music, play good games, support your communities.
Excellent.
that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and thank you to everyone who reached out to us, especially those of you who asked questions and left comments. And like Ryan said, feel free to keep them coming anytime. Make sure you're subscribed to Everything is Final Fantasy on Patreon, YouTube, your favorite podcast app, and all social media platforms. And please do the same for Airship Overdrive, Ryan's project, where you can hear arrangements of some of your favorite video game music. Join us next time for a date with an angel with one wing.